and just feel that way naturally without thinking anything else. And this is something men don't tell trans women. They don't tell them that they try to hide. Everything's at night, or a hoodie on, or behind closed doors. And the reason I like when I'm trying to get to the grassroots is because the girls need to know first and foremost that the man that they are with, they are comfortable with, and he is comfortable being the man that he is. So, like you just said, you're not afraid to be out in public with the person that you care about or you're dating, and you're not worried about what others say. The girls need to hear that. So it's great that you said that, and now the girls now will have an understanding that some men do care enough about them to go out in public without feeling afraid. And that is something that's very important. Even for me, I mean, I was in a relationship for a long time. So I generally, in the middle of my transition, I was mostly male. I was dressing as a male, so he was very comfortable with that. He couldn't deal with Stephanie because Stephanie was a show business girl and transitioning. He didn't understand all that. But he didn't have a problem going out in public with Larry. Now, it was good that you made it clear about that. Second of all, most trans women meet men at night, not during the day, because to be honest and to be fair, most of the girls generally don't have regular jobs. They either do drag shows or they're showgirls or they do other things to have an income. So generally their life is at night. And this is generally where they meet most of the men in their lives. Now, the ones that do try to function during the day needs to understand that there is a place in society for them where they can work, where they can live, they can feel valued, and they can own a house, they can drive a car without people yelling obscenities out the window, driving by your house, calling you all kinds of things. And the reason I'm saying these things is because I did a test to see how trans women felt. And a lot of trans women hide because of a lot of just neighborhood things or the way society sees them. Now, how do your children, were your children dealing with this really well at the beginning, or did it take them some time to adjust?
Well, my younger son wasn't really even old enough to understand what it meant. So he kind of grew up with a trans woman as a stepmother.
Oh, okay.
My other son was about 14 when he met her, when we started this relationship. For him in the beginning, it was difficult. I did talk to him. We had some deep diving discussions. He had some confusion and anger, but I have an older nephew who happens to be gay. And at that time, he was living with some trans women because his mom had put him out of the house. So these were the women who were making sure that he went to school every day, that made sure he got his high school diploma, that encouraged him and helped him live. So my nephew had a different idea about who trans women were. And so, combination of me talking to my son and his cousin, he got over it and understood it. And again, like I said, both of my sons still call my ex mom. And, whenever they call her and they're complaining about something or moaning about something, they talk to her, and then she calls me, and then I know.
Okay. Now, when you have these groups that you run on Facebook and YouTube, educating other men who might like the company of trans women or want to date them, is this for you, when you're listening to the men, is this more of a sexual thing, or you think they're looking for a real relationship?
It's multi-layered. Some guys are going to be what I call Pokemon collectors, but they're like that with cis women. They just got to have them all. They want to collect them all. They got to catch them all. That's what they do. Some men will never settle down with a woman, with a singular woman. They're always going to play the field and try to get as many as they can. Other guys want more than that. And, there's levels to everything that we do. And once a guy gets to a level where he wants to be a little bit more serious or wants to understand, what these attractions mean, this is what the group is for. Some of the guys are married. I mean, we all don't get along. I mean, there are some things that we definitely don't see eye to eye. Me being, an OG, and coming up through when there was no internet and there was no accessibility, there was no information that was accessible at our fingertips. And I came up when that didn't exist. And when you went to the library to look it up, it wasn't there. So we're in a different age. We're in the age of information. So I think a lot of guys do two things. One, they like to remain willfully ignorant. The second part is they live in their fear. And until they're able to grow out of those two things, they'll never be ready.
Okay. Now, I want to just ask you this because I think that it's important to our audience and mainly to the girls. I'm really here to try to educate trans women about there is some men that can offer them stability, hope of having a positive relationship, and the mere fact of that there's somebody out there that will love them and care about them. Now, why did you decide to do this? Why did you decide to speak, to come out? Because generally Black men are the worst ones for conversation in the first place, mainly when it comes to relationships.
Well, there's always been a loose community when the internet started going around way back in the AOL days and then the Yahoo days. There are always groups where, trans attracted men, I guess you would call them then, and trans women communicated. We intermingled, we talked. So there were always loose groups over the years where we would just have real open conversations. I remember Miko Hicks. She lives in Dallas. She has a weekly radio show. Mm-hmm. She used to have, when Blog Talk Radio first started, she used to have a talk show called Tea Time, I believe it was. And every week I would be on her show, and it was just a call-in, show. So I would mostly be on the phone. It wasn't video like we do today. Mm-hmm. And she never used my name. She used to always call me the distinguished gentleman from Michigan. And one day during an argument with one of the other panelists on the show, I was getting probably a little out of pocket, and somebody called me by my name. Troy Kennedy, calm down. I said, oh, I clutched my pearls. I said, oh my God. How do you know me? Oh my goodness. And, it just made me realize that, what I was saying carried weight. Then, a few years later, Diamond Styles, Diamond lives down in Dallas. We, again, on these forums that we were in, she said, well, I need a guy to interview. And, no guy will speak up. I was like, what the hell I look like? And so I drove to Indianapolis. She was visiting her grandmother after Thanksgiving, and we taped an hour-long conversation. So it was something that needed to be done. I know a lot of Black men in my own personal life, some who will admit it, others who won't, who mess with the girls. Mm-hmm. The more I became open, the more that I was able to see. And the more people came to me and talking to me about it. So I just decided that someone had to do it. And I was allowed to be on two different women's forums, their platforms, to speak out and to make a difference. And that's, and I owe that to them, and to them giving me that choice.
Well, Troy, that's amazing. I'm gonna be honest. I take my hat off to you for having the courage, because I know our people. I know how they are. Now, when you are dating a trans woman that feels that, do you feel that the trans women that you have dated separates themselves from the gay community that they first grew up in, and now that they feel that they're women, and you say, well, let's go support Pride, or let's go support this group, or let's go support this, or let's just go. And she says, oh no, I'm not a part of that anymore. My life is different now. Have you met girls like that? Because I have girls here that tell me that I don't do those gay things anymore. I don't go to
I don't,
drag bars. I don't do shows.
I've never dated a woman like that.
Okay, wonderful. Now, do you see any change in the way things are going now with men becoming more open to dating trans women, or do you still think men are just, hiding? I mean, because basically people aren't thinking about the fact that they're trans. People don't think about that. The first thing they always think is you're either gay or you're bisexual or you're straight. That's just how normal society looks at anything, no matter who you're dating. Because if they say you're dating a trans person, the first thing most women would think is that you're gay.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you a little story. I'm gonna tell you a story about my own family. Okay, I've told this story 1,000 times. The term heteronormative, I don't really think is really a real thing. And I'll use the males in my generation and the next generation in my family. So it'll be my brothers and I, and our male children, including my sister's male children. I have two brothers. One brother, it would be called heteronormative. The other, he happens to like the girls too. So is my brother who is heteronormative, is he normal, or is my brother and I normal? Okay. Now let's go with the children. There are 5 boys. The oldest one is gay. The second one, he likes trans women as well as cis women. The next 2 are gay. And then the last 2 are heteronormative. So, who's normal? The difference between my family and everybody else's family is that we live our truth.
Okay.
There's that.
I understand it very clearly. Now, do you think that in real reality, like you say, living your truth, do you think trans women that you dated thought that the relationship could lead to something really positive besides just sex or company?
Well, the 10-year relationship that I was in at the time, the marriage laws, her name wasn't changed. Getting your name and your gender marker changed wasn't easy at that point. I mean, of course, over the years, laws have changed and things have become different. So she didn't want to get married and it be just a symbolic wedding. Today, that would be different. Her gender markers changed, so it wouldn't matter. But yeah, I wanted to get married back then. My first real, what do you call it? What is the word? What's his word? Monogamous. My first monogamous relationship didn't happen until I was with the woman I was with for 10 years. I didn't know how to be in a monogamous relationship until that point. So we knew that it could be more. But again, as we were evolving, society was evolving. And there were some things that I didn't know yet. Again, we're talking almost 20 years ago when we first got together. I'm not the same man that I was 20 years ago, nor is she the same woman. But mind you, we're very close. We'll always be very close because, again, my children call her mom. But I was in 2 other relationships, one for a little more than a year, another for 2.5 years. One was an older girl, one was a younger girl. So there was definitely more than just sex. I mean, we supported each other. I supported their work. One did drag and was an entertainer. The other was a musician and an activist. And even though we did kind of fall out ugly in an ugly manner. But still, that's what, me as a man, what I want in a relationship is, a woman who I can grow old with, even though I am older, mature, well seasoned.
Okay.
So, I'm not just looking for a sexual relationship. I mean, in these last few years, sex isn't the most important thing. What else you got? I can get a pretty girl. What else you got?
Now, let's just say you're out with your friends. Now, I want to say this because for me, I understand the different ways of sometimes the way trans women look and act. So I think now, Troy, you're very funny. Now, let's just say you're sitting in a bar and you say, well, my girl's coming to pick me up or to drop the keys off for me to go do something or this and that. And you're in the bar, let's just say you're sitting around a bunch of the guys and things are going well. And we know these are just typical situations, whether you're hanging out on the porch, drinking beers and shooting the shit, or whatever it may be. Now, she comes up. Now, sometimes trans women can sometimes be bigger than the man. Sometimes have stronger features than normal women. And people figure this out real quick because we live in a sexual world. So people are constantly sizing up each other. Now, have you ever felt really uncomfortable with the trans woman you were dating?
In the beginning, again, as I've said, there's levels to this. In the beginning that I was, I can remember a time when I was married at the time. I married the same woman twice, by the way. That's another long story that we won't get into. But I remember being out with a trans woman, and I used to run a paint store years ago, and I ran into one of regular painters who come in the store, coming out of a restaurant, and I was embarrassed. I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. I felt some kind of way. And I think that was the first and only time that had ever happened. And again, this was in the late 90s. And it impacted me, how she felt, how I made her feel, the cowardice that I showed. But fast forward to, a few years back, and I was on a date and we went to a Buffalo Wild Wings, and she hadn't had her name and gender marker changed. She was, passable, even though passability is very subjective. And I know she was feeling some kind of way because she had to show her ID. And I grabbed her and I kissed her in the mouth. I said, "Come on, baby, I'm hungry." She knew why I did that. And she was shocked. But it's just like, you were feeling some kind of way, but I wanted to let you know that I don't give a fuck. So, excuse my language. I cussed. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But, so again, even through all of these years, no one has ever come up in my face and said anything to me. And maybe because, I'm a bigger guy. I'm like 6'1". I'm like, about 232 now because the Rona made me fat.
Oh. It made all of us fat. Trust me. I'm not really fat, but I'm bigger than what I used to be. Troy, trust me, I put on like 15, 20 pounds. I used to be weighed like 150, and now I'm like 170 something. I'm like, ooh, just only in the belly area and the breast area. But anyway, now, are you in a relationship now?
Nope.
Okay. Are you looking for a relationship? I mean, because Troy, when you think about it, you've had a lot of experience. You've been in a relationship for 10 years. You have 2 children grown, which I'm sure has been, the challenge.
I'm a grandpa too.
Oh, and a grandfather too. Oh, that's amazing.
Well, actually, I'm 2 pops.
Oh.
That's what my grandbaby called me, 2 pops. She don't call me grandpa. That's not for me.
Okay. So are you actively looking for a relationship right now? What is the difference? No, this question first. What is the difference between dating a trans woman and a cis woman?
I will tell you what my 12-year-old son at the time, my youngest son, he was 12, what he told his mother. He said, "Mama, ain't no difference between you and her. Both y'all crazy."
That's very funny. Okay. Now, do you see, do you think for the LGBT pronoun community, and especially the trans community, do you really believe in your, from all of the meetings that you're doing and the platforms that you're speaking on, do you really feel that these women feel like they matter and that they can find a positive relationship today?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about matter, and we're literally in the era of Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
But two trans women were just one was dismembered and put in a suitcase. And I'm sorry, I don't have her name to speak her name and say her name. And another young woman was recently murdered right after that. And before that, Iana Dior was jumped by a mob of men, just like Malaysia Booker was jumped by a mob of men. Do they matter? So especially do they matter to Black people, to the Black cishet community, the cis heteronormative community? Let me use the full name. When trans women say and they feel that they don't matter in this Black Lives Matter movement, I understand that. I can't speak against that. I can't get angry about that. I can't say anything about that because all I can do is support and amplify that voice, because what they're being shown is that they don't. So, but for me and what I do, they matter. I'm going to speak up, and I'm going to be vocal and visible.
Okay. Now, what do you think? Why do you think Black men feel so threatened by trans women all the time to harm them?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to take a step backwards. We haven't been taught the differences between gender identity and sexual orientation. Those are two entirely different things. Taking a step back further, we don't understand how we are impacted by religion, mostly Christianity, and colonialism. And so we don't know our history. We don't know the history of trans people and how indigenous cultures all around the world embraced trans people. They were shamans. They were healers. They were revered from in different cultures all over the world. And yet, with colonialism, with religion, with patriarchy, trans women have been demonized. And so, because Black men have their own thing that we've gone through slavery, through Jim Crow, through this 400 years of oppression, and then being viewed as, alpha males, dominant males, holding on to our manhood in such a way because at times that's all we had. There's a problem. Most men don't go through therapy. Most men don't know how to talk out their issues and talk out their problems. So there's a number of factors that leads into it. And we can talk about all of that, but let's talk about accountability. There's one thing someone told me, and Alexis, I'm gonna give you a shout out. Alexis told me years ago, "You took a bite of that tranny apple, you're never gonna give it up." She said this to me in probably 19, maybe 88, 89, 90. And I never, at that time, I didn't know what that meant, but I didn't know how true that was. And what happens with a lot of guys, they can, they might during the day, yell something disrespectful to a trans woman, but they're going to be in her inbox that night. And so most men are hypocrites and cowards.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And you can't, they're not accountable for or brave enough to just stand up and say, this is what I like and this is who I am, because they're living for other people. They're living in their fear. And that never stops them from fucking with the girls. I cussed again, from messing with the girls. And so that hypocrisy is what I talk about. You know, you can't say that you don't like something when, especially when Backpage and Craigslist were out and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And on Craigslist, you can find, you know, thousands of ads in the big cities for men, M for T, men seeking trans women.
Mm-hmm.
You'd find all of these ads for women escorting. It wasn't just two dudes in every city buying all the escorts. So we are in a supply and demand economy. You look at trans porn, and it's one of the biggest genres of porn out there, and has been year after year after year. So the numbers, the math doesn't lie. You know, you can talk about your religion, you can talk about what you feel, you can talk about what you believe, you can talk what you believe is morally right and wrong, but the math doesn't lie. And the math says that men, cis heteronormative men, knowingly pursue trans women for sexual encounters.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know, Troy, that you just said that. You know, I wanted to, I've asked this for a long time, and nobody could ever give me a straight answer. Maybe you can clear it up for me. Now, as you know, trans women, like I said, sometimes with the way they look, sometimes with the way they act, but a lot of them, even today,